Hi, I'm Malcolm Graham Wood, and it's great to be back at Core Finance for my CEO interview. Today my guest is Marshall Abbott, the CEO of Arrow Exploration Corp. Marshall, good morning and welcome back. It's great to see you.
Great to be here, Malcy. Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. I know you've got a packed schedule. It's been a little time, but not that long since we last saw you, but so much has been going on, it's not true. Just before we talk about your most recent announcements, could you give us a little bit of a run through of what's been going on in the last few months for Arrow?
Certainly. So we've been very active on the drilling front. And in fact, it's been shown that we're the fourth most active driller in Colombia at the moment, which for a small company I think is fabulous. The company's in great shape. We're very protective of our cash position, which today is hovering around 12 million. We've got an approved budget to spend 45 million this year, and we're well on our way to executing on that budget. We have drilled 14 wells in a row, and each one of them has been a producer, an economic producer, so we're very proud of that. Our drilling costs have come down on a per well basis.
They seem to always, don't they? Yeah.
And oil prices had our back, so from a Brent perspective, I think Brent was $85 today. And our net backs are north of $56 on that Brent reference.
Yeah.
So the fiscal regime is very fair. We're in an area that is very fertile and hydrocarbon dense. And so we find ourselves rather lucky here.
They say that the more you practice, the more luck you get, but you've done very well. In our last interview, when I checked back, I said, I'm very much looking forward to seeing the horizontal results because a lot of people were interested in it. You said at the time that it would be, fantastic for the company if the well was successful, and there's no reason to believe it wouldn't be. Of course, it would produce more, and of course, per dollar in the well, much more attractive on the economics front. So it looks like it exceeds expectations. Please tell me about it.
Well, it's been a great surprise to us, Malcy. Thank you for that. Well costs are hovering around 4.2 to 4.3 million, all in gross. And we expected...
I thought the estimate was 5 to 7.
Initially it was, but we refined that. So we brought in some Canadian expertise, one individual of which who's drilled 400 horizontal wells. So horizontal drilling is in its infancy in Colombia.
Yeah.
So we're taking advantage of that. So we drilled this well. It went according to plan. We had 2,000 feet of lateral length. We expected the well to come on at 1,000 barrels a day net, 2,000 gross. At the lowest pump setting, 29 hertz on the ESP, the well's flowing 3,200 to 3,500 barrels a day, zero water cut.
That is incredible.
And so the way prices are right now at that production level, it'll pay out in a month.
And of course, you're in a situation where you're being as conservative as you possibly can.
Correct.
The next time maybe, and we'll talk about the next time in a minute, it might be a longer horizontal. You did 2,000 feet or whatever, it could be longer, or is that...
Subsequent wells will have a much longer lateral, going almost to the property line.
Yeah.
And so this one was taking advantage of structure in the reservoir. Subsequent wells will be a couple of meters lower overall on the horizontal leg, but just as effective.
I mean, you've got a fantastic team out there. I mean, I've been lucky enough to visit there and meet them, and they're fantastic. So just before we sort of pack up and move on to one or two other things, you announced that you're going to drill 3 more.
Yes.
Is that because you just want to drill 3 more, or that's what's in the plan, or you're on the pad, which I saw? Obviously, I saw the makings of the pad. Mm-hmm. Could you drill more from there, or talk us through the sort of future of horizontals for Arrow?
So we have 5 cellars on that particular pad. Each cellar is attributed to 1 well. So the first horizontal is in a cellar. The water disposal well is in the second cellar. Yeah. And then 3 subsequent horizontals will be drilled back to back. As you know, we only have to skid the rig 15 meters to the next location. So it saves on mob costs. And that's a very effective use. And then when the last horizontal is drilled on that particular pad in the cellar, we're going to move it to the Baquiano.
Right.
prospect, which is on the same fault trend
Yep.
and has the same structural morphology as Carrizales Norte. So we've got three-way closure up against the fault, and it's only 2 kilometers north of Carrizales Norte. We think it might be connected.
And will that be a vertical well, or will that be a horizontal well?
Initial well will be vertical,
Yeah.
and if we have hydrocarbon-bearing Ubaki, then the subsequent wells will be horizontal.
And there's a pad for Bacarati.
The pad is complete,
Yeah. And
and the road.
that's the one I flew over,
That's right.
which was being made at the time of the road.
Exactly.
So that's already complete. So that would be one of the wells at the end of all the horizontals, or is it going to the backyard? They go there.
So after the horizontal program is finished, we'll use
Yeah.
the same rig, the Petroworks rig that we've
Yeah.
used on every well we've drilled.
Yeah.
And we'll move that to Bacchiano. And from a vertical sense, it should take 8 to 10 days to drill and complete. And then at that point, we'll decide whether or not we want to go horizontal.
Okay, I'll come back to the question about how many rigs you use in a minute, but what you've just mentioned is water disposal.
Yes.
So, and there are one or two things that's come up in terms of the water disposal in the last few months. One or two of them foxed me, and I managed to get your guys to help me out, and so I understood. And the bit that foxed me was that when I was over there in February, I saw the CN4 well being drilled, and it was a success, and it was testing over there and so on. Since that, the announcement has been that the CN4 is going to be a water disposal well for various regulatory reasons, and of course you've got another water well which you just mentioned as well.
Correct.
So talk us through the situation. What these need in terms of water attention.
So you want to stay ahead of the water curve. Water is your friend and your enemy. It's the drive for the reservoir. So that's pushing the oil to surface. At the same time, you have to be able to dispose of it in an environmentally friendly fashion, which we are electing to do. So there are two ways to go. You can convert an existing producer to a disposal well, or drill a dedicated disposal well. We're doing both.
Right.
Because of the productivity that we're seeing in the horizontals, we need 2 disposal wells. Each one of those wells can put away 13,000 barrels a day of water. And we're going to need that put away capacity to ensure that we can produce these wells at maximum rate. Keeping in mind we're stewards of the reservoir and you don't want to be over aggressive. So the first one is a conversion. And we are opting to go the conversion route because the approval time is much less than drilling a dedicated horizontal. So that's why we're going down that road. We've surrendered 200 barrels a day in the CN4 well to make it a bona fide disposal well. And that's been well accepted by the regulator in Colombia.
So they like that. It means that you take that off being a producer, so you lose your 200 barrels a day. But as you say, it's a sort of sacrifice for a later date. Presumably, it comes back in some shape or form into the.
We'll capture the reserves.
You'll find it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so you'll have the two water wells. One which is CM4, and one is the other one on the same pad as the horizontal wells. I think the other interesting thing that you mentioned in your comment in the announcement the other day was that you increased your oil capacity from 3,000 to 3,600 barrels a day. But success here, and 3 more wells, if they were to go as expected and take the time they're expected, you're going to be looking at that's being a little conservative, isn't it?
We're going to see a step change in production levels, to be sure. Now, keeping in mind, these horizontal wells come on very strong. And ultimately, though, they also have steep decline rates. And so there is a balance to produce these at just the right level to ensure that you're not getting premature water breakthrough and you're getting maximum productivity. But having back-to-back horizontals is going to ensure that we're always going to overcome any kind of decline profile. So that's the strategy moving forward.
And of course, not all your whole portfolio will you be drilling horizontal wells.
Correct.
Quite a lot of them will still be the traditional vertical wells that you've been doing up till now. So, Arrow's been growing very, very fast in 2 basins and the 2 producing fields that you've constantly talked to us about. There are a number of other things. There's the C7 strat plays that you've mentioned. There's growth in a number of areas. Why don't you talk us through where you might see a bit of growth, and also, obviously later I'm going to ask about also Pardo or various other places, but
Sure.
where you're moving to now, obviously Bacchiano and so on.
So the Bacchiano,
Masigura.
the Bacchiano pad is complete. Once the final horizontal is drilled on the CN pad, on the dedicated pad, we'll move to Bacchiano. We have 3 wells planned there, but we have 5 cellars.
Yeah.
So if we do have success, we can become more aggressive. And from an incremental cost standpoint, each cellar is about another $50,000. So it's worthwhile to have extra cellars as opposed to mobilizing all that construction equipment to come back and expand. So we're in good shape at Bacchiano. And then we've got Mataguafa.
Yeah. And that's got a pad. That's the attic pad.
It's got an existing
That's all,
pad, and we have to upgrade the road.
Yeah.
And that'll be a 4th quarter well also. And then additional prospects that we've identified with 3D are the Mataguafa Oeste and the Capullo, which are both layovers for the structural containment that we see at the Carrizales Norte pad. It's a combination of up against a fault, so you get 3-way closure up against a fault, and a subcrop edge. So there's a stratigraphic component to it, which is quite exciting to us. That means more reserve capture.
Yeah, we like stratigraphic traps. We do a lot, and as you say, you might have found 1 or 2 in the horizontal
Yes.
by accident. You incidentally, you went through the fault on the horizontal well, and I was quite surprised, but then I realised it was deliberate, not.
Yes.
No, it was no accident going through that fault.
So when we're drilling the build section, the most efficient way to build was on the wrong side of the fault, and then you come through the fault into the zone of interest.
Right.
So that's the key, is where do you land the casing for the horizontal leg. On the way down, we encountered 2 zones that in aggregate were 40 feet thick of oil-bearing sand. And we cannot see a structural closure on that, which indicates to us that this could well be a stratigraphic trap. So we're going to test this water disposal well in the C7C and see what sort of productivity we're going to get out of it. And then we'll finalize the conversion once we get approval from the regulator. But ultimately, we'll come back in 2025 and do some more development drilling.
So 2025, and I say that because we're now almost at the end of June, so we're halfway through 2024. You are planning to drill 15 wells this year. Is that correct? How many have you done so far, and how many have you yet to do?
We're on 9, going to 10.
So you're ahead of the game.
Yes.
You might do more, or once you've done that, you'll settle in and go. What's the plan for 25?
For 25, initially we're going to shoot the hockey stick
I like the hockey stick.
in
Yeah.
3D seismic, because we know 3D is really the answer to drilling these low-risk exploration development wells. You can't drill it on 2D, it's just not precise enough. So 3D has really opened up this block. And at the same time, we want to be active on the drilling front, so we have a host of prospects that we want to pursue in 2025. That would include drilling the C7 at Carrizales Norte.
Yeah.
We need extra pads or extra cellars there, so we're going to expand the pad.
So for the pad, that'll be on or near CNB pad, where the horizontals are at the moment.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And you can just expand that pad to make it bigger.
So based on current mapping, there's potentially 17 drillable development wells at Carrizales Norte in the C7. And each well is a surprise, of course, and will change the amount of wells that you're going to dedicate to it. But we're very focused on deploying the capital in the most efficient means. So we have a prospect matrix that we pay attention to, that we utilize as a tool, where to go first. Clearly, the horizontal wells are the most profitable and most prolific, and rates of return exceed 500%. So that's where our focus is. And if we go down the list of prospects in the inventory, we get down to Mataguafa, which is offsetting 2 wells that have produced 600,000 barrels, and And we're seeking attic oil that is higher in structure. So that's relatively low risk.
Yeah.
So we're looking forward to getting that drilled. But the 3D seismic is going to open up some very exciting structures that we can see on existing 2D data. So there's quite a bit to do in 2025.
And so does that mean, I mean, obviously we've realised that you're going to have to build, expand the size of the CNB pad. Will you need to make more pads at different areas, or is everything pretty much in the padded area, as it were?
It would seem at this stage that the discovery of the extra zones on the wrong side of the fault is going to require its own pad.
Right.
And if we have success at Bacchiano, like I think we're going to have to expand that pad. As well, we're drilling horizontals into the top of the reservoir at Carrizales Norte.
Yeah.
We have the optionality to drill
Deep. Yeah.
deeper. So we've got 10 feet from the top and 40 feet from the top. And they won't be one on top of the other, they'll be staggered.
Right.
So we have room for 10 horizontals. And then there is space at the down dip end to drill additional horizontals in phase 2. But that will all depend on what sort of water production we're enjoying out of the initial horizontal phase.
But I assume that as you go through with more and more success, you'll, every 5th well or 10th well or whatever it is, you have to drill up a water well.
Correct.
Yeah.
Stay ahead of the water. Here's an example. There's a field that is proximal that was discovered by Canacol, our former shareholder. It's called Rancho Hermosa, and they've produced 16 million barrels of oil and 93 million barrels of water. So as long as you can put the water away, it becomes very profitable. Our operating costs will hover around $5 even with that kind of water disposal. So it's
not as if it's a huge expense.
No, not at all.
And provided, I mean, so many people say, oh, well, it's the bad news that the water's involved, but as you said, as long as it chases it and so on. Osso Pardo?
Osso Pardo, good question. As you know, we've been waiting on this extension application to be approved for quite some time. So in Bogota 3 weeks ago, the team and myself met with the ANH twice in one day. And really it's coming down to Canacol and Conoco being partners on the deep rights.
Right.
So we need authorization from both of those players in the form of a letter to state that our shallow development is not going to impinge on their deep rights. Their deep rights are in a frac moratorium, so there's no room for them to move. So Conoco is looking to exit the country. Canacol, of course, will provide a note overnight.
Yeah.
But they have a negotiation ongoing with Conoco to ensure that it's a clean exit. So we're waiting on those two to make some progress and provide permission. We're hopeful that by year end we do get approval, but we're not counting that in any of our forecasting.
Right.
But it represents quite an opportunity. We just drilled 2 wells there, as you know.
Yeah.
The second well we stimulated, and it's doing 170 barrels a day.
Yeah.
3,000 foot depth, so they're much cheaper to drill, and we have room for at least 20 wells. We think we can get it to 4,000 barrels a day when we own it.
And so I was going to ask to a target for when you were going to do that. But at the moment you haven't got it on the list because you need the various approvals and bits and pieces to come through. Mm-hmm. We should think about it in 26 rather than just a sort of, as an extension of the long-term drilling program.
I think that's a reasonable approach. We would look to expedite, but again, it comes down to the prospect matrix.
We talked about a lot of wells here, and I know you're going to expect this from me, but do you need 2 rigs?
Well, potentially 2 rigs would make a lot of difference. The momentum it requires to get up to 2 rigs is the challenge. So if we decided today to go with 2 rigs, the second rig would show up in 6 months. So we would have a pad built specifically for that rig. And we're looking at it. It's definitely a viable option to accelerate the drilling program and get that production to 10,000 barrels a day, which is kind of a target of ours over the next few years.
Come back to the target in a minute. But yes, I what I'm seeing is, maybe one rig dedicated to all horizontal wells in a particular area, or just being able to be it's easy enough to move them around. So
It is.
it's not a problem. When you mentioned the targets, I'm just going to try and nail you down on it a bit.
Sure.
And targets are just that, nothing more than targets. They're aims and ambitions rather than. I don't want anyone to be stuck in them. 10,000 is still the arrow plan when you
It's a goal.
sit quietly and say, chaps.
Absolutely, it's a goal, and it's one that we think we can attain. Probably, we're a lot more optimistic about attaining that with recent results.
Yeah.
And that would allow us to become a dividend issuer, which is, I think, very helpful for our existing shareholder base. We've got happy shareholders. We'd like to keep them that way. And we think we've got the prospects in hand just on the Tapir block alone to get to that target.
Balance sheet or happy shareholders. Let's do balance sheet first. Just I know we're running out of time a little bit. Joe always tells me strong balance sheet, no debt. You paid off the warrants and things last year. So, Marshall, you've got cash. I think you mentioned $12 million at the moment, with the good production that you've mentioned. That should be growing positively towards the year end and into next year. Yeah.
Yeah, Malcy, we're very protective of our cash position. And with netbacks and the drilling tempo, we expect the cash position to increase materially through to year end.
2 or 3 quick things before I let you go, because I know you're in town for only a couple of days, but and you're very welcome. The Canacol overhang of 22% of the shares hang around for a while. Well, Canacol, in my view, they made the mistake of saying that they needed to sell before they did anything, which brought the share price down. It was subsequently placed at a nice discount for the new buyers, but it's now bedded down nicely. You've got what I call friendly shareholders. I think you call them gritty or sticky or sticky shareholders. So, and they're very good. Tell me, have you met them? Are they? What do you think of your new partners or shareholders?
So we've had interaction with the Meridian representative. He is very constructive in the narrative. He's fluent in oil and gas operations. He represents quite a money fund that is a luxury. As I said, he's a fluent oil and gas investor. In fact, he sits on the board of Petrotel, who has a very similar horizontal drilling program going at the Britannia asset in Peru. And we have had some cross-pollination on technical issues that he's introduced us to. So he's been very helpful in that regard.
Brilliant.
And I think he's done well on the investment. He got it at a discount, and we've had some share price appreciation since.
That's good. It's always nice when people put their tackle on the table and write a big check.
That was a big check. It was, it was a little more difficult than we envisioned, actually.
Yeah. Canadian production, we're not talking about too much. You're shutting in some at the moment. What's going on in Canada?
So Canadian gas price is at its lowest ebb that it's been in the last 10 years. So from a unit price, it's gone from $3.50 a gigajoule to 60 cents a GJ. And you just can't make money at that level. So there's too much gas in North America overall and in Canada. What's going to change that, however, is the first LNG facility off the west coast of Canada will be on stream probably by first quarter. And that is initially 2 BCF a day going to 4 BCF a day. So it's going to take a bunch of the stranded gas in British Columbia to the coast, and that takes the pressure off the Alberta transmission system. So I think the forecast is for 350 gas in the near future being quite viable. In the meantime, what didn't make sense for us, selling our gas at 60 cents, we're losing money.
Yeah.
And you still have operating costs even when you're shut in, but they're minimal compared to the loss we would be afflicted with.
Yeah. Great. My penultimate question was going to be, you've always said that you're always keeping an eye open for M&A activity and looking at other companies in the sector. I guess you've been too busy for that, but probably more likely worried about other people running their slide rules over Arrow, at the moment, wouldn't you?
Being at the dinner and not the diner.
What do you, just your general views on anything really? I mean, the sector, you're very popular. You want to make sure you're not taken over while you're too young and too cheap and everything else, and maybe other opportunities in the sector which you might take advantage of because of your strength.
Well, we do have a dedicated team looking at opportunities. We're seeing some of the bigger players in Colombia decanting assets. So we like to look at those with the balance sheet we've got, and the accessibility to additional cash, I think, is there. We look at assets that are producing and have the potential to be doubled, and sometimes that doesn't work for some of the bigger firms.
Yeah.
And here's an example of Ecopetrol at 600,000 barrels a day. It's been mandated that they sell some of their assets and use the proceeds to invest in renewables. So there's quite a bit of M&A activity possible in country on a property by property basis. Yeah. From the perspective of us being the dinner, well, I mean, it would have to be something that makes our shareholders happy. And there are a number of firms that are looking for developable assets in country that we know of. And as you know, there are no secrets in Bogota.
Yeah. When I was with you in Bogota earlier in the year, you very kindly let me come into all the meetings, and everybody seemed to chat to everybody else about everything.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
You know, there was nothing sort of secretive about it. They just said,
all the
"We'd like
rumors
to buy
are
that."
true.
Yes, all the rumors are true. Yeah. Listen, I've taken that way too much of your time, which I thank you for. I always ask the last question, which is always a stupid question because you've just been through everything in Arrow. But how do you see Arrow over a sort of 12 to 18 months time frame from here? Where would you see it? And that's a good time because we're in the middle of the year. So by the end of 25, how do you see it?
Well, most importantly, I think we're going to see appreciable increase in share price. So the cash flow is going to be very strong, and share price really equates to production levels. If you look at from the beginning to now, it's an exact parallel track. So as we increase production, we're going to see share price appreciation, which is going to allow us to potentially get more aggressive on acceleration of some of the drilling prospects and pad construction and water disposal. Yeah. So I think we got a very dedicated team in Bogota, as you've seen firsthand, and 9 professionals in Calgary who take the job seriously. So we've got a very good team in both jurisdictions. That's kind of our secret, and they're committed. And production, we hope to exit in around 5,000 barrels a day, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
But from a cash flow perspective, we'll see how Brent price really behaves itself over the next little while. We're concerned with oil price through the American election cycle. So that's anybody's guess.
Yeah.
But right now, the Brent price is in the $85 range. We're making quite a bit of money at a $56, $57 net back.
Yeah. Marshall, thank you very much indeed for your time today. It's really kind of you to take so much time on a busy trip like you got. You're only over here for a couple of days or 3 days or so. So
my pleasure, Malcy. It's always good to be here.
It's great to see you. So I've been Malcolm Graham Wood here at Core Finance, and on my CEO interview today, I've been joined by Marshall Abbott, who is the CEO of Arrow Exploration Corp, where a lot is going on. I'd like to thank Marshall for joining me today, and for you for watching. Thank you very much indeed, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye now.